to be.
This is my birthday song. It isn't very long. On system.debug.
So
Sorry if that was a bit loud. I figured if his face was going to be like 9, my entire screen, that I would.
Yeah. Happy birthday, Brian. Happy birthday,
Brian.
That was beautiful.
We didn't forget your birthday.
Thank you.
Who's that guy?
Oh, so that's Arash. Okay, so everybody, tonight we have Arash on. We're going to be discussing automation in your Salesforce orgs, and not only if it's possible, but why we should do it.
Yes.
I agree.
Sweet. I love automation.
So I know Megan had a question like kind of right off the bat there.
Well, first of all, I think we should talk a little bit about what Arash does so that everybody can know, besides just those of us that were on the call before we went live.
I second that completely.
Yeah.
Me too.
Arash.
I third it.
Yeah.
Tell us about yourself.
I feel like you could skip that whole part. Let's just move on with the show.
Wow. Brutal.
But I kind of don't think of automation the way I think that you all were describing automation before we started, where it's just like writing tests and stuff. So to me, like an automations team job isn't testing, it's to create software that makes like the lives of developers easier. Like just internal software for that. And part of that is writing tests.
But just a little bit?
I would say the majority of it. So it's about like improving processes, speed, and cost, like all in one. And that to me is like the focus of the automation team. And like testing is a part of that because testing is something that is very time consuming, that like I think the dream is to get your testing done earlier on in the life cycle, and automation does that. But there's like other things that an automation team could do, such as like builds and deployments, and that has nothing to do with testing. So that's just where I'm at.
How long have you been doing what you're doing, man? Sorry to cut you off, Ryan.
A few years, 3 years. I started off in build automation, which transitioned into test automation, which is probably why I have that mindset.
So what's the difference between the two of those for somebody like me that has no idea?
Build automation was more of deploying code to a server, and test automation is testing against that code that you deployed.
Okay. That makes sense. That's logical. I can follow that. Nice. Okay.
Sides of the same coin, kind of. But yeah.
Yeah. Before, and now you do the after.
Yeah, exactly.
Or was it the other way around? Yeah. Okay. No, I got it right. Okay.
You got it, dude. You got it.
Very good.
So, yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No. So what kind of stuff do you guys usually do to make developers' lives easier? Like, I like that. I like that idea.
So it did start off, at least for me, it started off with testing. So like writing just a whole test suite of, I think we have like 150 test cases. So writing that entire test suite, and then it moved on to more of standing up like DX scratch orgs just on the fly, and that's kind of where we're at now. And then yeah.
So what tools are you using? I mean, we're speaking here, at least I'm speaking here, strictly Salesforce, and it sounds like as soon as you said scratch org, going, okay, cool, we're on the same page.
Yeah.
What tools are you currently using to do that? So I mean, and let me just assume that this is your process, and I could be totally wrong.
Sure.
But you check in code, and then hooks run, you automatically spin up a scratch org somewhere. that then will deploy that code, run all of the, maybe it even runs all the unit tests and will report back whether or not it, the unit tests have failed and stuff. But then it then goes and runs your browsers in headless mode. Is that what you're doing? Or
Yeah, that's like the general goal. Is to get it to run like that, where maybe not every time you deploy, but at least every time you merge into like the development or master branch or whatever.
Yep.
To have that happen.
So then what tool set?
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would say the main tool for testing at least is Selenium. So Selenium would be used for all like web browser based testing. It's Selenium WebDriver to get like specific with it. But that's used for all like browser testing. And everything else that we've done is more of like custom built, I would say. There's no real tool to do that.
Gotcha.
So when I hear, oh, sorry.
Well, I was just going to ask how you.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it. Right. When I hear Selenium, I always think of Eclipse. So, are you guys doing anything with Eclipse still, or no?
Yeah, you don't have to, but
okay.
That's my dog.
Well, we have to know the dog's name now. Does it have to do with testing? Because that would be really awesome.
No, it's Kobe. It has to do with sports.
Not beef.
No, like the basketball player.
Kobe.
Okay.
He's barking at someone outside. I don't know if you can still hear him. I'll close the door. 1 second.
Yeah. It's funny because we use homegrown stuff as well to do this automation and running of tests and stuff, and we use Cumulus, but yeah, that's why I was asking about tools. So we're back.
Yeah, because you're NPS people. You're .org.
Yes.
Cumulus is all over the .org GitHub.
Oh yeah. Sorry, go ahead now. I was filling the gap because I am not a dead air lover kind of thing.
Nobody likes dead air.
Yeah. What was asked? I forgot.
Oh, because I said when I hear Selenium, I always think Eclipse.
Eclipse.
And you're like, we can use Eclipse.
We do use Eclipse, but you don't necessarily have to. Like I have done Selenium testing in IntelliJ.
Okay.
But really, it doesn't matter. I just happen to use Eclipse because that's what the person that was there when I started was using, and I just kept it going.
Even though it's really, really slow. And it takes like forever. And it come like October, it's no longer going to be supported by Salesforce for the Force.com IDE. And you're going to, yeah. Okay. Just checking.
You're turning up that pressure knob here.
Megan's like, hey, yeah. So do you like grape soda or like orange soda? And she, yeah, actually, it's actually not that bad. She's like, yeah, even though it like kills you and gives you cancer and makes you dead. Whoa, like we're at the left field, dude. Hard left.
I was just curious.
I mean, Eclipse is still supported by everybody else in the universe, so.
Also,
dude, you're talking to the person that's still on Sublime, man. So, like, I have no room.
I still use Sublime. I also use Atom.
No, it is all about VS Code these days, guys.
Yes.
It is all about
I'm not
VS
using
Code
VS Code yet.
Oh
I
my
got
God,
so
hands
mad at my
down.
VS Code.
That's the editor of choice.
It's not my editor of choice.
No, it's perfect, Megan. So nonetheless,
I know. That's why I'm still willing to hang out with you guys despite that.
Fight.
Yeah, so we started out on testing, and now we're ending up on one IDE to rule them all.
So now, one of the coolest things that Arash actually does, which I think is neat in the process that we have in place, is not only is he building stuff out that builds our Scratch orgs with plugins to include, field sets. Like as soon as we spin up Scratch orgs, we have the ability to have field sets, custom tabs, and all of that kind of stuff ready and good to go for us. But his software not only runs against any of our Scratch orgs that we're building out in, right? He can actually test in any of those, but he also has it set up where he can actually go into direct orgs that aren't Scratch orgs and run the exact same tests there to make sure that like any code that you're building out in a test org actually will work in your production org or your full copy sandbox as well.
Cool. So that begs a question for me, because it sounds like it's pretty flexible. Seeing as how Map Anything is an ISV and y'all have a package, does it also do things where it'll build it in a non-namespaced and a namespaced org both and run tests, just to ensure that everything works in both
Correct.
scenarios?
Yeah.
Sweet. See, I love it.
Oh yeah.
So we
That's
have
neat.
like before and after. So like before even creating the package itself, we run a test, then create the package, then run another set of tests.
Very cool.
Try against both.
So now the idea of a unit test, because this is where I start to get a little confused, perhaps. Maybe that's not the word I'm going to use, but that's the word I ended up using. Unit test is the idea of, we break down and we test one little piece at a time. I get the impression, though, you're testing more front end. You're really doing more end to end. You're not really just testing, does this radio button activate, right? You're actually saying, I'm a user, I'm logging in, I click this button, I do this, all the way to the end with basically your one test, so to speak. Is that true? Is that false? Is it one test suite and a bunch of little tiny tests that do each of those steps? Or
there's a bunch of like tiny tests that do like, specific functionality, and like I think what you're talking about is more of like regression type tests that like really like delve into like the deeper things of like the software, not just like general overview. But unit tests itself, I do not do. Just because unit tests, I feel like it makes more sense for like the developer themselves to write a unit test.
Right, but I mean,
what happened in translate, like get lost in translation.
Yeah, I guess what I'm referring is when we write a unit test as a developer, generally the best case in most cases is to you test this one method, you test one thing, right? Yeah. And my curiosity is, when you're writing your robot tests, are you starting on login page and then going all the way to closed one opportunity or whatever, or are you doing test login page and then the next test is, I'm just going to test clicking this one link, and the next test is, because I know it's got individual assertions, this passed, this didn't, this passed, this didn't, but are they arranged the same, say in like a suite of tests to take you through an entire application, an entire feature, or is it really down to you're just running one test against a text field, you're just running one text against a pick list, etc.?
It's more of like categorizing different types of tests into like kind of separate suites in a way. But you'll have like one general smoke suite that runs like all of everything from like kind of a high level, and then you'll have different like sub suites or subcategories or whatever you want to call it that will test like a specific type of functionality.
Okay, cool.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think it does. I was just really more curious about the differences, because it feels like front end is more of the functional test and unit testing. I mean, we've all seen that maybe we haven't, but there's like this little cartoon that talks about like testing of a screen door. Unit test says, yes, it works, but the functional test is it failed because it's a screen door on a submarine, right? So that's kind of what I kind of tie that stuff to, I guess, when I'm thinking about it. But Nathan's in there asking about Apex mocks. I'm all for mocking, but I think that's a different kind of testing than what we're discussing here. Or maybe not. I don't know.
Well, in actuality, because we do have API callouts inside of Map Anything, and some of his tests actually do have to, because even though it's to Arash's point, the developers have to build their own unit tests, right? Like their Apex tests and everything that kind of runs against a single method. We do have API callouts that go, that require hitting the front end, going to that end, and coming back again and looking at that data. And Arash does have to have tests available for that kind of testing. Is that correct, Arash?
Yeah.
So he is testing the APIs in that regard.
Gotcha. Oops, there we go. It doesn't let me type some of the stuff I'm trying to type in and answering Nathan's questions. Oh my God. Google.
Breaking it.
Nathan wants to know, do you use tests with DML?
No.
So you don't do any inserting or anything like inserting or removing of like, no, I would say you do, because you do have to use our software to insert marker layers and such, don't you? Or no?
But would that be in his stuff, or would that be what his test is triggering? Sorry, I'm kind of confused now.
That's like kind of what I was thinking too.
Yeah. That's the stuff your tests trigger.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you're not directly you're not directly making calls to the database, no matter what.
Right.
Or reading the network traffic.
Yeah, I'm not doing.
So like your test will do something. Like, let's say it's, click a button. So your test will go in, it'll click the button.
Mhm.
Then the other developer who wrote like the Lightning component and the Apex controller and the test class with that's going to run when the button is clicked. So his stuff is actually going to be the stuff doing that test, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I see it in my head now. We're all coming together, man. We're all coming together.
It's more
We
of
can go.
the
We can
way
go
like,
trans.
use like test, if that makes sense. Like an end user sees like if you click this button, this appears, but an end user doesn't see like all the back end stuff that's happening.
Yeah.
Because I mean they don't care.
Yeah. You're just the front end guy. You don't actually do any like real heavy lifting, right, man? Obviously not.
So I've got a good one, and I think this one's kind of more for the audience. But when you're writing all of your QA stuff, right? Let's say for instance, BJ over there has a ticket or story come in for a bug, right? And it's something happened in the UI. Is the process such that you would go out and you would say, okay, hey, I heard you got a new bug in, BJ. Let me take a look at it, and then you do like your QA piece of it to replicate the bug, replicate it such that it works, or quote unquote works as far as the bug actually being reproducible, and then hand it back off to BJ to do the fix? Or like what's the flow like there when a bug comes in that you can kind of write a QA test for?
Was that a question for me?
Yeah, sorry.
You were just saying you're asking the like.
I'm asking the ether. Sorry, I'm not very good with
No, you're good.
gaming.
You're good. So usually the way it goes is like BJ or whoever will run my like the automation suite, see whatever bug exists, and then just correct it. And to be honest, sometimes those bugs that are found are like on the automation side, because like there's a lot of maintenance that I think goes along with at least front end automation, because anytime you make any sort of UI change, it could potentially break whatever it is that I am doing.
Yeah.
Like it'll fail a test, but it didn't actually fail. So the way that I fit in with what Brian is doing is, well, I would say I find bugs too early in the process to like directly impact like Brian, if that makes sense. Like I kind of should be making Brian's job easier. Would you?
Yeah,
say?
but if so you're finding a bug. I'm coming from the other side. Like let's say there's a test case that you guys, like everyone across the board, just missed, which happens. I mean, that's pretty common in our field. Let's say that happens and a user calls up and says, hey, when I try to update this field, something happens, right? It throws up a big red X or something. Or if I try to delete what I had in that field to edit it, a big red X comes up and now I can't edit it at all anymore, right? What I'm saying is, at the end of the day, when that bug comes in and you guys are working on it, is the flow such that he throws the bug over to you, you build out a QA little piece for it so that you can kind of manage regression testing with that specific bug, and then you hand the story ticket, whatever, back to BJ for him to actually do the fix, and then he can test against your...
Okay, I follow.
Yeah, sorry, I'm very confusing with words.
So that would make sense, but that isn't exactly the way or at least I do it.
Okay.
So I don't really control. To me, I'm not the maintainer of test cases. That's sort of like the job of QA. So it would really be QA. It kind of is, but it wouldn't be me directly that does it. Where QA creates the test case, QA asks me to create like an automated test for it, and then that's when Brian would be able to use it.
Okay, so it has to kind of go like it's almost like a big U-turn around there, kind of. So it's like it'll come down the chain. Brian will probably eventually test for that thing, write some test cases of his own. But in the meantime, there's all that whole cycle of QA going on where it may end up in your lap as well.
Right.
Gotcha. Interesting.
So question, what do you write all of your tests in?
Java.
Java all the time.
Yeah, all the tests are in Java.
Okay.
You could write it in anything. Like Selenium supports, I think, Java, C#, and probably some JavaScript languages and Python.
Okay.
But I don't know. Java's just my language of choice, so that's what.
Okay.
I worked with a guy who created a language, or not a language, but an interface to it with Ruby, and he called it Rubinium. I don't know if it ever took off, but he was writing his Selenium test using Ruby, which was interesting, right? It was cool to see. The only time I've ever done it is using the Selenium IDE, right, where you actually load it up and you click, and it kind of writes the test for you because you click here, wait for this, click.
So that's
the only time I've ever done it. What was that?
I've never actually used that before. I've seen it before, like the Selenium IDE that like is like testing for dummies, kind of.
It totally is.
But I've never actually used it.
Gotcha. Yeah. I don't know, because so here's the one thing I keep hearing. I mean, Selenium is the go-to, right? But correct me if I'm wrong, hasn't that like been retired, so to speak? I mean, they're not improving it or doing anything more with it, or am I completely out of the loop on that? It's been years. But
their website looks really old, so I wouldn't be surprised. Let's ask the expert. But I just wanted to weigh in there, like kind of like I do with Eclipse. Like it's just ancient, but continue on, man.
I did
continue on.
So I think Selenium RC, Selenium WebDriver are technically retired, and they combined to create Selenium 2. And Selenium 2 is still supported. Or it's still like being upgraded and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But as far as like the Selenium that might have existed like 10 years ago, that has evolved into something else.
Gotcha. Because that's exactly probably the last time I touched Selenium would have been about 10 years ago. So that's why I asked. Yeah, it's been. I mean, I haven't had to do that. Like my world stops at unit testing for the most part. I don't get into the functional or the front end side of things, which you're probably thankful because you generally don't want a developer like me doing that stuff.
Yeah.
I used to say the only thing worse than QA is developer only QA. So.
Oh my gosh,
worse than
that's
no QA.
Just a horrible.
I totally misspoke. The only thing worse than no QA is developer only.
Developer only QA.
Yeah, sorry, I left out a very important descriptor there. Our guest is kind of like, you son of a. No, I'm just.
There really is nothing worse than developer only QA. You should never check your own work. Never, ever, ever. It's a horrible, horrible habit to get into. And it's a horrible, horrible habit to have spread.
I'm always right, so I mean.
Unless you're really good at breaking things the way a user is going to break them. Developers, I have never found that balance. I have never been able to go, oh, what happens if I hit escape 14 times and then put 36 tildes and an exclamation point in this field? What's going to happen, right? I would never think to do that because I'm like, what person would do that? Well, you know what? There are users out there who would be like, I'm just going to upload an emoji to this text image or to this text field and see what happens.
Yeah. Or,
you'd be surprised how much emojis bleed through, even inside of Salesforce. This is like a thing where I have seen it and I go,
emojis are everywhere.
We're not supporting it. I'm not changing it, but we're not supporting it.
If an emoji shows up. Yeah, great. It showed up.
Yeah.
Is that dude's first name really Poop Emoji? I don't get that. Yeah.
Oh, now you get a community and it's all just going to get exposed to your customers.
Oh, yeah.
Careful what you write in your about me. That internal about me is the same as your external.
Dun, dun, dun.
Wait, do you actually do that? Do you fill that stuff out?
I did, I think.
I just draw little pictures of me bald with a beard, like on anything. That's all I ever talk about. It's just,
Yeah. Do you do it in ASCII art? That's the question.
You guys have gone way off the rails, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I took us off the rails.
Just in case anyone was
off the rails.
Flown.
I don't know. It's Brian's birthday. We're just celebrating Brian and his baldness.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, I feel like you have been really quiet. Don't you have any? I mean, I know you work with the man, but don't you have any questions you would like to ask?
Well, I'm actually the manager of the automation team, so there really isn't like a lot that he does that I don't know about already.
Gotcha.
Okay, so let me ask you this: what's it like managing the automation team?
Amazing.
It's a dream.
All it is like they just do their own thing because like the whole thing is that it's really just them asking questions about how to integrate different ways inside of Salesforce. That's the only time they ever really approach me about anything. But outside of that, like they're like Arash and his team just kind of knock stuff out. They're just I don't know what else to say. Rock stars. I feel like anybody that I manage is a rock star though. So that could just be me.
So then, PMs writing good stories. It's a good bit. Good PMs writing good stories, I would say.
Nathan's asking a question in here, and I'm trying to figure out because I don't know where this line is. So he's got any endorsements for testing styles like behavior driven, etc. And my question is, is the concept of testing styles, does it exist in that world in which you live? I mean, we know it kind of does in the unit testing side of things, but I really feel like what we're talking about here, to me, it really feels like more like functional testing. And I don't know if does it have those same kind of, do we use the same language, behavior driven test development and all that stuff?
I mean, I would say that automation kind of impacts whatever language it is that's being like spoken, if that makes sense. Like you can't talk about like test-driven development without having automation in place. So even though I don't like directly use that, I feel like all of the work that I do is like for the cause, if that makes sense. Just to like impact the testing process of like the company as a whole.
We'll call it cause-driven development. How's that? CDD.
He's a change maker. He's a change maker.
And some of the neat features that come out of like automated development, especially when you're building it inside of like the development shop. To Arash's point is not so much somebody who finds bugs in the software, but he's building tools for developers that make developers' jobs easier, right? Because it doesn't have to get so far down the chain for somebody to figure something out. And one of the cool things that I know Arash is working on is the ability to actually test specific portions of the software. So as developers are building out or fixing aspects of certain pieces of the software, they'll be able to go in and just run specific automated tests against those, just to kind of, enhance their feedback right away, like going, oh, well, I didn't check this over here, and the automated tests do. So I think that's probably the bigger benefits of having the automated team.
Gotcha.
That's
so
awesome.
that, and you may have said this because I was reading in the comments, Mark said something and it kind of drew my eye for a second, but did you say your developers, and if you didn't say this, answer it. Did you say your developers run these tests on their own too as part of their checks to ensure that, oh, I just made a change, I want to make sure that all of Arash's tests is passed and everything too? Or I'm just curious or do y'all just wait until you merge it and push it and say it's on your plate now?
Well, right now everything's built off of like as people are merging it, they can actually have him run against it. But the goal is obviously to make it so that anybody can ever test it. Anybody anywhere can say,
we have
I touched this.
So there have been like specific developers that have asked us to test against their specific like branch or scratch org or whatever, and we have done that. But like to like what Brian was saying, the main thing that we do is like against the merged code.
Gotcha. Cool.
But hopefully that changes. Fingers crossed. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, no, I think it's super valuable. I mean, it's great when a developer can have that feedback right away and not have to even wait for necessarily perhaps a build cycle or something to run before they realize, oh, I just broke this feature that I've been working on or that somebody else has been working on for a week or two, right? So
being able to increase the version.
Yeah. I mean, being able to run those on my own before I even hand it off to QA would, just solidify the process and probably make my QAs really happy when they get my code because they're like, hey, I already ran through all of your automation and stuff like that.
So what other tests can like developers run when like they're building something? Like, can you decide to run like the other tests that are related to stuff that you did to make sure you didn't break other people's stuff with your fix? If you have like codependencies in your code, and like let's say you're doing things in a different place, could you like test somebody else's stuff too, just to make sure you didn't break your stuff? Or would it be like auto triggered or anything like that, or would they be able to do that?
I would say you could do that once it's been merged. Like,
okay,
been merged together, then you could test against like everything across like.
Because if it's not on your branch, you're not going to be able to test against them. Yeah, but once it's merged and it's there, like you could run a test against somebody else's stuff if you wanted to.
Yeah,
and do whatever. Okay. I hate when somebody's stuff breaks other people's stuff. It's just so irritating. It'd be great if I could like prevent myself from doing that.
I feel like that's how most bugs are caused, is from that right there.
Yeah. Megan made an update and it broke somebody else's thing. Yeah. Or somebody else made an update and it broke Megan's thing. It goes both ways.
Yeah.
You guys are all being really quiet.
I know.
So I'm responding to the class.
We are all talking to Pat here. Hey, Megan, get with the program.
Yeah, so Pat is asking a question real quick. It's kind of off topic here.
I know, Pat.
Do we have any general tips for looking to become a dev on the platform? And I was just mentioning that we've done a lot of shows on that before, but it might not hurt to have a revisit on that at some point, given how now we have Aura components and Lightning Web components and everything else is changing.
They don't use actions. Yeah.
Pardon?
They don't use actions. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. They're going to use actions soon, though. It's going to happen.
But yeah. Besides ask Megan questions. There we go. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe we have another revisit show coming up where we kind of talk about what all the cool kids are doing nowadays. There's things like if you're a woman, there's not women in tech. What do they call that? Rad women developers. Yep. There's a class you can get on for that. That's it. Rad Women Who Code.
That's radwomen.org, by the way, you guys that want to sign up for it.
There's things like SFDC 99. There's a bunch of other stuff that what is that? Is that Pluralsight? There's a bunch of classes on Pluralsight and things like that. Yep. So there's numerous places you can go for that, and I imagine there's even classes on testing.
And on that note, there's a couple of other resources you have. You can actually always ask questions to @LifeWithRyan on Twitter, and he'll be happy to help you out. You can always reach out to at the infamous RJ, and he also is happy to answer any questions.
That's true.
And if you have any, or any of you have any questions about automation or getting into it or finding out more about it, I'm sure you can reach out to @ArashNole on Twitter. That's @ARASHNOLE.
Yeah, Knowles, because I went to FSU, so it's like Knoll, and if you say it quickly, it sounds like irrational.
If you have to explain it.
Oh, Seminole. I gotcha.
Irrational.
All right.
I did my best.
Really, you guys are being mean to Arash, man. Like, the first time I met him, I gotta like stick up for this guy because you guys being like real mean.
Dude, I like Arash. Arash is cool. Dude, that didn't bring up Arash.
Arash,
we're
you know,
Yeah,
There you go.
it should be a picture of like a little kid.
yeah, that's me. No, I mean, the little kid is me. I just felt like I looked really cool as a 5-year-old.
Oh, now he's explaining
We'll figure
that.
that part out later.
And also, you can reach out to @system.debug on Twitter. We do want to thank everybody who is able to join us
Ryan.
tonight. What? Oh,
There's also Megan SF on Twitter. You jerk face.
Wow.
Who, in all honesty, is probably more likely to answer the question than
Hey.
anybody else that he's
in my
mentioned so
defense,
far.
I also didn't announce my own, and he knew Megan. So, but fair enough. So you can get with Megan, like at SF Megan.
Megan SF.
Megan SF, MEIGHAN SF, and she'll probably respond quicker than anybody else. That's for sure. So we do want to thank everybody who joined us tonight. Have a great night. Thanks for joining me on my birthday, and we will see you next time.
I totally should have had a birthday bump. Happy birthday.
Thanks, Arash.